it seems like what you're telling us is that we don't need to eat veg at all.
Yeah. No, we don't. And for a large portion of our biological past, we haven't. And in fact, even in recent cultures that have been large, we call them hunter gatherers, but what they really were hunters, such as the Plains Indians in North America. They would have the bison herd would come through, and they would do what's called like a bison drop or a buffalo drop, and they would scare part of the herd over a cliff, and they would fall and die, and then they would harvest the bodies, and they would dry the meat, and that would be their food for the rest of the year. And so they largely ate meat the entire year. If they were to eat if they were to eat plants, it would generally be for medicinal purposes or because they were starving. And if they had a plentiful supply of meat, they really wouldn't eat it just for fun, and they didn't need to eat it for health either. And they were extremely healthy. There's a study in 2001 that showed that at the time, the Plains Indians in North America were the tallest population of humans on Earth, and they were very healthy. They didn't have all the diseases of the West that we see elsewhere. They're now just called chronic diseases or non-communicable chronic diseases, and they're getting more and more prevalent every single year, every single decade. They're going up and up, and now we're starting to call them human diseases because now we're seeing dogs and cats have a rise in prevalence of human diseases over the past 40, 50 years as well. And then you have zookeepers and that will tell you if you feed animals what they're not supposed to eat, they can get human diseases. You feed animals human food, they get human diseases. What does that mean? That means the food is causing the disease. What is a human disease? They're talking about lupus. They're talking about diabetes. They're talking about cancer. They're talking about other non-communicable chronic diseases. You really can't make that argument about, say, the Inuit, who are in the northern parts of Canada or in the Arctic Circle. There are no plants available. In certain areas, there are people living. There are simply no plants that exist. And so, they're hunting seal, polar bear, whales, those sorts of things. And they live generation after generation after generation after generation without plants. And so you clearly don't need plants to thrive, not just survive, but thrive, because you really can't survive. You can't just eke out existence in the Arctic Circle. You either thrive or you die. And they're thriving. And in fact, all our ancestors are thriving. Go back to the ice ages. People say, well, they're specially adapted to living in the snow. No, actually, we're specially adapted to living outside of the snow because we have, we've developed agriculture very recently in our past, in our biological past, maybe 8,000 years, 10,000 years at max. And that's brand new. But we were living through ice ages going back 2 million years. We not only survived ice ages in the ice, we not only thrived, but we became the most dominant species on the planet during the ice ages. I think because of the ice ages, because it forced our ancestors to manifest their destiny as apex predators, and not just apex predators, but the most successful apex predators that have ever existed. Because of our brains, because of our tool using ability, we became super predators. And so you definitely don't need to eat plants. And the thing is that you don't want to eat plants. So it's not that you don't need to eat salad. You can get all the nutrients you need from meat, which is true, but you don't want to eat the salad because the salad actually can be harmful to you. It is harmful to you. And that's because plants defend themselves just like animals do. If you're out in the wild and you're trying to take down a bison, you're going to need tools. You're going to need tactics. You're going to need a way to take that down. It's not going to be easy unless you know what you're doing and you have the right tools to do it. Why do we go to grocery stores and buy vegetables when we can just go to any park and grab a bunch of leaves, right? Make a salad out of that. Well, because they're very toxic. Because plants do have defenses. They're not mobile. They're not kinetic. And so they have to have other defenses. Plants make about 1 million different defense chemicals. Most of them will kill you. And the plants that we do eat that are considered edible are just lower down on that toxic threshold. But that doesn't mean that they're without toxins. They do have toxins. It's just we have more ability to detoxify those specific toxins than we do other things.
What you said earlier was that we were going against the ice. We were going where the ice. We were going towards the colder weather.
Yeah.
And we were seeking the fattier animals, which right away says that our body wants fat.
Yeah.
Like we somehow we knew this and we're trying to get it. But yet in almost every doctor that we're going to go see is telling us that we're overweight because we've eaten too much fat, that we're sick because our cholesterol and all these things related to fat. And honestly, I have so many people reach out to me trying to understand, like, what am I supposed to do in these situations? So first, I'm thinking food, because let's just talk food for a second.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not supposed to eat any is it any, like, all of them are dangerous? 'Cause you said lettuce. Well, you said salad, but are you talking even lettuce?
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
there's some that are less offensive than others, but they'll all have these things. And so, I mean, even grapes and avocados, we say, oh, well, those have to be good for you, and they're fruit, so the plant wants you to eat them. They'll actually make a cat very sick. Why is that? Because there's toxins in there, and the cat is not able to cope with those toxins as well as we would be able to. But when you look at wine, they have all these. Red wine has a lot of tannins and other sorts of things in it, and we talk about, like, oh well, you don't want all that stuff, all that sort of stuff. Those are the defense chemicals. Tannins are a type of defense chemical, so that's in the grape. Even though that's a fruit, and the plant wants something to eat the fruit, it does not necessarily want you to eat the fruit. It wants generally birds to eat the fruit, and most fruit on Earth will still kill you. If you get lost in the woods and you start looking at random berries and fruits that you should not ever eat, a berry that you don't recognize as safe, because it's probably not, if you don't recognize it as safe. That goes for plants too, especially goes for plants, because they really don't want you to eat them. Maybe the fruit, maybe you can think about that, but still most fruit will kill you. The cassowary bird is a tropical bird here in Australia and elsewhere. Frugivores, they only eat fruit. And there's about 150 varieties of fruit and berries that they eat. Every single one will kill you. Every single one will kill everything except a cassowary bird, because those seeds have to go through the digestive tract of a cassowary bird, or else they won't germinate and they won't turn into a plant. In fact, if a cassowary bird leaves an area or dies out, those plants die out, because they have to go through the gut of a cassowary bird. So it has to be extremely advantageous to the cassowary bird and enticing, and also very detrimental if something else tries to eat it. So it has to be a big deterrence to the wrong thing eating it, and rewarding to the right thing eating it. And that's how the world works. That's how nature works. It's kill or be killed. They have to protect themselves. And the seed is a plant's baby, and a fruit is trying to carry those seeds somewhere. So it wants a specific animal eating that. One of these made up arguments, they'll say, well, no, we've been breeding them to be safer and safer as it goes. So maybe that was before, but now not so much. Actually, if you talk to farmers, they'll tell you they actually want the more toxic crops, because those are most resistant to pests, because they make their own pesticides, they make their own insecticides. So, long before we had people spraying crops with pesticides, plants existed, and they weren't getting destroyed and completely eradicated by insects and animals, because they make their own poisons, they make their own toxins. And so that's what GMOs are. That's where people say, oh, these GMOs are so harmful. And it's like, okay, but that's sort of the point. You have a crop that is resistant to locusts, and you have another crop that's resistant to everything except locusts. And then you take that protein out from the locust resistant crop that makes them resistant to that. You put it in over here. Now they're resistant to locusts. Why are they resistant to locusts? Because there's a poison in there that will kill the locust, even though it's resistant to the other poisons. Okay, well, that makes it more toxic to us too. You're adding more poison to this. That's the whole point. And that gives better crop yields. And so some things will be cold resistant, heat resistant, drought resistant sort of genes. And those are GMO sort of additions that can be added. But there are additions that can make things more toxic. So yes, some things are less toxic than others. But I should rephrase that. It's not that they're less toxic than other things. It's that we are more capable of detoxifying the toxins in certain plants than others. But those plants that we eat will kill most other animals. Just being inundated with, oh, you got to eat your veggies. Veggies are so good. All this sort of nonsense. But I was flat out taught in 7th grade that plants and animals are in an evolutionary arms race. Plants becoming more and more toxic, so less and less animals can eat them, so they can survive and thrive. And then animals becoming more and more adapted to specific poisons and specific plants. So they can eat that plant and survive and thrive. And that becomes their dedicated food source. So if you step out of that evolutionary arms race, the other side is just growing without you. And you might have some holdover defenses. We come from an herbivorous past. About 6 to 8 million years ago, we started scavenging and trying to eat meat, and started using tools actually to crack open the skulls of dead animals to get at the brains, very nutritious. We were doing that for a couple million years before we figured out how to break it in such a way that we can make a sharp edge. And the first workstone tool that we found it's been dated to be about 3.3 million years old, and that was with Australopithecus, it's believed. And then things really started changing. Then we were able to kill animals. We were able to cut them up ourselves because we didn't have claws, we didn't have teeth. We needed tools to do this. And then about a million years later with Homo habilis, that was when we first started seeing apex predator behavior. They were able to now start getting the animal themselves. They were able to take down the whole animal, get all the meat, all the organs, everything like that. And you see a spike in our evolution from there. Our brain size and our height started growing exponentially after that, as compared to our growth prior to that. A lion, if it runs out of meat, it can't eat. There are no plants that a lion gets to eat to survive. It gets meat or it dies. So we've been able to weather different sort of famines by having different access, being able to get nutrition from other sources. But that doesn't mean that it's optimal for us. It doesn't mean that it's good for us. It doesn't mean that it's not toxic to us, just like an avocado can seriously poison a cat. There are objectively toxins in there. It's just we can deal with those toxins better than we can, say, in hemlock, where half a leaf will kill you, give you intractable seizures, and you'll be dead in 2 minutes. So it's more about the defenses to the toxins as opposed to more or less toxicity in the plant.
I think the next thing that brings me to is we eat such a wide variety of plants that part of me is wondering then, isn't this a multiple effect?
Yeah.
Like I'm eating all these different fruits, vegetables, so isn't that adding up in me? So even if I could have survived, I ate an orange, one orange this year. Okay, no problem. My body dealt with it. But if every single day I'm eating multiple different types of fruits and veg, it makes me believe from what you're saying, then I'm putting myself in a dangerous scenario.
As Dr. Georgia Ede, who's a Harvard psychiatrist, she said, probably the last thing you want to do is eat the rainbow, because you're actually getting a wide range of some very toxic, harmful effects. And they can, obviously her field is mental health. So it can cause a lot of inflammation and oxidative stress and damage to the brains and the neurons, and can actually precipitate mental health issues like major depression, anxiety, OCD, bipolar, ADHD, and even schizophrenia. And she and others, such as Professor Chris Palmer, also at Harvard, they are finding that changing people's diet, getting rid of these things, putting people on a more ancestrally appropriate, biologically appropriate diet for humans is actually reversing and putting into remission major psychiatric issues like schizophrenia. People are not having hallucinations anymore. They're not thinking that the government's following them and tracking them and coming to their house, or they're not seeing people that aren't there, things like that. So it's amazing what this can do. It's amazing what harm we're causing ourselves. I mean, the illnesses that we're seeing now just simply did not exist in the numbers that we're seeing them at any other time in human history. We've been listening to doctors, we've been listening to politicians and the drug companies and the food companies, all saying the same thing: don't eat fat, don't eat meat, eat more plants. Plants are healthy, and yet we've become the fattest and sickest that human beings have ever been in our entire existence. And if you think about it from a variety point of view, you're absolutely correct. You will never see an animal in the wild eat a variety of things, certainly not a variety of plants. They eat very specific plants because, again, they're in that evolutionary arms race. They only have the adaptations to detoxify certain plants or certain families or classes of plants. I eat a very monotonous diet and I love it. And that's the thing. It tastes good when you're hungry, and when you're hungry, it's great, and then you stop eating when it doesn't taste good. But that's the thing. Animals do not eat a variety. We are the only animals that are eating variety, and that is not in our best interest. That is always going to be a problem. If we are evolved and biologically adapted to eat plants, it's going to be very specific plants. It's certainly not going to be the crazy variety of plants that we eat.